Welcome to the BetterWallet Podcast, a podcast where we talk to everyday people who have changed their lives through managing their money. We talk about their money journeys, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Welcome to the next episode of the BetterWallet Podcast. As you guys know, the BetterWallet Podcast is all about demystifying the topic of money and sharing powerful money stories from people who truly beat the odds. Today is not a typical episode, so we're not going to talk all too much about finance. Maybe just a little bit, but not all too much about the numbers and investment vehicles like we normally talk about. Today, we're going to talk about my upcoming trip to Bali, which as of this recording, I'm going to Bali here in about 2 days. And I am very nervous, but very excited. I wanted to break that down because I felt like I had a lot to get off my chest. And hopefully this makes me feel a little bit less nervous because I'm putting it out into the world for you guys. So you get to hear all of the drama. You get to hear everything that I'm currently thinking of. And I didn't do all too much prep for this episode. Normally I take about half an hour to prep my thoughts. I'm just going to give you the raw, here's what I'm thinking at this moment, because I feel like it'll be more candid. So here we go. Let's talk about why I'm taking this trip in the first place, right? So why Bali? Why are you going? Who are you going with? Because, normally I don't share a lot of stuff online. But as you guys know, I became debt-free in 2020. So July 2020 is when I became debt-free. And I told myself, maybe before I became debt-free in July 2020, that I was going to travel, right? 2 episodes ago, I talked about how I'm investing the money that I'm not applying to debt anymore. I'm using that money in order to pay for life experiences, which in my head is mostly travel, right? I love traveling. I didn't travel much growing up. So now that I'm debt free, I want to get out into the world. I want to learn about different communities, different cultures, how people live. And Bali has always been on my list. So July 2020 rolled around. I became debt free. You guys all know what was happening. 2020 COVID. I couldn't go anywhere, right? I couldn't live that dream that I always wanted to live, of be able to travel as much as I wanted to, right? I wanted to hold myself to 4 times per year of traveling and or just leaving the country. So now I'm able to do that, right? So my 3-year debt-free anniversary is coming up. I keep looking over here because where my calendar is, officially next week. So the 17th, which will probably be a day before this episode actually airs, that was my debt-free journey. So July 17th, 2023. You guys also know that that date's really important to me because that's also when my adopted dad, that's when he passed away. So I purposefully paid off my debt, all my debt, the same day that my dad passed, because I no longer wanted July 17th to be the worst day of my life. And instead, I wanted it to be a happy day, right? My dad would have been really excited that I paid off all my debt and eventually get to the point where I'm financially free. So that's the reason why that date is really important to me. So I say all that to say, I'm going to Bali. So who am I going to Bali with? What are you most excited about? Things I'm excited about. So I'm going with my one good friend, and his name is Kelvin. Kelvin happens to be the first roommate I ever had when I moved to Philly. I didn't know anyone in Philly when I first got there. Right after I graduated from school, I knew my colleagues, but let's just say they weren't trying to interact with me. I was just some, poor kid from the projects, right? Like a lot of them, they had multiple houses, a couple of people were trust fund kids. So I didn't really have a group of people to hang out with initially. Kelvin happened to be one of the first people I met within the housing community that I lived in, and super cool guy, in the finance world as well at the time, working for Wells Fargo. But he became my first official roommate in Philly. And we've really stayed in touch over that time frame. Again, he was a financial advisor. I was as well. So we really connected on that. He happens to be a Cowboys fan. I'm an Eagles fan. So we kind of go back and forth about that, throughout the year. But Kelvin hit me up maybe a few years ago. It was hey, I'm trying to do this whole yacht week thing, which if you don't know what yacht week is, basically you rent out a yacht in Croatia And you go around Croatia and different parts, and you're on this yacht the entire time, jumping into the water, all that jazz. It's a big party, right? And it's not just you and whoever you're with. You are amongst other people. I don't know how many, but maybe let's say hundreds of people that are all kind of doing the same thing. So it's like this giant party. So that kind of fell through the time that we tried to schedule that. So then we started talking about Bali. And Kelvin now lives in Dallas, and he hit me up and said, "Hey, like, I would like to go to Bali. Like, I'm trying to gather some guys. Like, let's go." So I was just like, "Hey, like that. I mean, if we were trying to go in July, that would be an amazing time. Things won't be as busy with the business. Let's go and do it." But I am horrible at taking time off of my job because I love what I do, but I still get that little bit of anxiety when I take a break away from the business because it's my baby, right? Like, I can always delegate to some of the people that I work with, but it's my baby and it's hard for me to leave. So, I agreed and said, okay, well, I take a week off, go to Bali, we'll have a great time. Where we're going is kind of like Yacht Week, but it's called Lux Week in Bali, which is basically 100 people, complete strangers, coming together from all parts of the world in order to basically party together over the course of a week. And during that time, there are a lot of different events. So there's all white party. So that's going to be really cool. There's going to be a yacht trip where we have to wear like Hawaiian clothes. You're going to be able to go full wheeler riding, which, I grew up in the country. So full wheelers are near and dear to my heart. So the fact that I'll be able to do that in another country will be dope. So that's, a lot of what the week is going to bring. And then there's a day where you get to do really whatever you want. So, we're thinking about going to some of the distant islands and everything, take some pictures, do some stuff for Instagram content, right? So, like, that's all going to be really fun. But what I'm most excited about is just to be able to hang out with 4 other dudes that, I know Kelvin, but I don't know his friends. But I'm like really excited to get to know them a little bit more. And then also the other people who come from different walks of life during this yacht week or during this Lux week. So again, it's going to be 5 of us and then 95 other people that are complete strangers. And then at the end of the week, you basically know 95 more people, or I guess in my case, another 99 more people. So I'm really excited about that. I love networking. I love getting to know new people from different countries. And I didn't get a chance to study abroad growing up. So I think this will be my opportunity to learn about and connect with more people that don't come from America, don't come from Georgia or Pennsylvania, 2 places where I've lived. So that's going to be really exciting. I'm also really excited about the weather. I'm really excited about tasting different foods, right? Like, so having, Indonesian food, I've never had that before. So that's going to be great. I would assume that it's, similar to Thai food, which I'm not completely sure. I could be making that up, but given how close they are in geography, I'm sure they have amazing cuisine. So I'm really looking forward to all of that and just, spending a week celebrating the fact that I've been debt free for 3 months or 3 years. Things that I'm really nervous about. Things I'm really nervous about. Actually, one other thing that I'm like really excited about. I've learned that Indonesia and specifically Bali is actually fairly cheap. So a lot of times when I'm traveling to different places, let it be Tulum or to the islands, I went to Turks last year, or I guess it was this year. All of those places are really expensive. So this is probably the only place that I've ever been to that frankly is a little bit cheaper. I think Nicaragua would probably be second. It was fairly cheap, but our Airbnb wasn't all too cheap at all. So I'm really excited about not having to pay all too much money to do things. All right, let's get to the place. Let's talk more about what I'm nervous about. The first thing I'm nervous about, I just talked about, is the fact that I have to leave the business for the week. And there will be I'll probably check it in the morning, and there might be times where I have to do certain things, but for the most part I'm going to try to be off the radar and allow my team to take on what needs to be taken on when I'm gone. That's what I'm most nervous about, but I'm really excited about the fact that I can now see how my business operates with me being gone, which is the end goal, right? I always want to be there for my students and for my clients. I always want to be there to create content, but there's so many different things that you guys don't really see or know of that I have to do on a day-to-day basis. I work 8 to 10 hours a day, doing a lot of things in the background just to keep everything afloat. paying the bills, whatever needs to happen to make all that stuff happen. So it will be really exciting to see how my team picks up any slack during that time. And it also gives me opportunity to figure out where the weak spots are. Like, what do I need to hire out? So for any inspiring business owners out there who are just like, hey, like I want to own and operate a business, I think going and doing a study like this, especially if you don't currently have help, I think will be really impactful. Take a week off, take a few days off, figure out what needs to get done, and then delegate appropriately based off of what you don't like to do and what you don't have time to do. I think both of those are really critical because you might have time to do something and you might hate it, right? Those are things that you want to delegate. There might be things that you love doing that might be too tedious, might take up a lot of time. You want to delegate that. The things that you want to take on are things that you have to actually be there to do. Like, for example, this podcast, I have to be here. I have to be talking to the screen, right? But when it comes down to editing and creating reels and uploading those reels onto the BetterWallet Podcast Instagram page, which, short plug, make sure you're following that page, or uploading it into Buzzsprout, which I use for the podcast, which gets it into Apple, Google Podcasts, all that stuff, Spotify. I have a team who does that, but it allows me taking time off allows me to assess where I believe I need more support and I need to hire out for that stuff, right? Trying to move from working in my business to working on my business so I can think more strategy and spend more time with my Bulletproof students, right? My VIP Bulletproof students. So that's one thing that I'm nervous about is just leaving the business, but I think there's going to be some benefit with that. The other thing that I'm nervous about, and this has nothing to do with the business, is, and let me know, like, am I the only one that thinks this way? But like, I love traveling. I love going to different countries. I love learning about different cultures, different food, like learning about like how people grew up, whatever. I hate flying. This is going to be my longest flight since, I think the longest flight that I ever took has been my trip to Portland that I took maybe a few months ago. I'm pretty sure was probably my longest. That or going from Philly, maybe it was the trip from Philly down to Colombia when I went to Cartagena. But otherwise, like I haven't really taken too long of flights. And frankly, I haven't been on one of these big, like, double decker like flights before. So, needless to say, I'm pretty nervous. I struggle with turbulence. I struggle with not feeling like I'm in control of the flight, right? Like when it comes down to driving, like I know I'm in control of the wheel and I just have to watch for other people. But there's something about flying that I just haven't really come to grasp with. And there's been a lot of, as you guys know, like I'm a history buff. Like I love listening to like different podcasts about like the history of flights and things like that, and understanding how turbulence works and the fact that all planes are built to withstand a lot of challenges, really like obstacles, air pressure, anything. Like they are built in a way that they should be good in really any situation, right? And that has given me some relief, but I still struggle with turbulence. So I'm like, I'm very nervous about that. But I'm excited because once I'm done with that, I can check something off my box of saying like, hey, like I got that done. I did that. Right. And it'll make me less nervous going into the future. Because sometimes when it comes to being nervous or a little apprehensive, you're nervous for it before it even happens. But when you're going through it, a lot of times that nervousness goes away. Then afterwards, you have a sense of joy knowing that it's done. And that has been proven for every part of my life, from going to college where I didn't know anyone when I went to Penn State, to taking on different projects on the university campus or becoming a resident assistant. Like a lot of times I was nervous because I felt that I didn't know what I was doing, but because I'm like an over preparer, I felt more comfortable, but I wasn't to the point where I felt like it was like seamless. This is going to be another part of that. One other thing that I'm like really nervous about is just going to another country where there might be different cultural barriers, right? Like I always tell people, like I am American through and through. I know about a lot of different cultures, but there's a lot that I need to learn. And there's a lot that I hold myself to learning about different cultures because I feel like it's important that I understand the world outside of the United States, or frankly, the world outside the Americas. I think it's really important that I understand that. And when I have kids, I can teach them that, like my dad was able to teach me when I was growing up. So I'm nervous about that, nervous yet excited about learning about a different culture, how they go about doing things. And that's going to be really exciting. In terms of preparation, some of the things I've been doing to prepare. So on my Instagram page, I told you a lot of y'all that I plan on using Googlefy while I'm over in Bali. So I asked the audience maybe months ago, hey, like, what do you use when you're traveling abroad, and what has been reliable? And then also what has been the most cost effective? And there were 3 different servicers that people have mentioned. The first one is Googlefy, which I'm going with, which basically is Google's phone service. They use the T-Mobile towers, and they allow you to travel internationally. But what I've learned is that if you stay for too long, they can completely cut you off. So luckily, I'm only going to be there for a week. But if you plan on being international for multiple weeks or multiple months, I would see if you're allowed to do that with Googlefy. They don't cut you off, but it might not be the best option for you. So the other one is going and getting a SIM card at wherever you're going. So I could have went into Bali and got a SIM card in Bali, but I felt like I wanted to have internet service no matter where I was at, because I knew there was going to be a layover, or our layover is actually in South Korea. So I want to make sure that I have internet service there for that layover, and I don't have to be scrambling in order to figure out what's going on with the business, or like what the Wi-Fi is, or trying to decode their language, whatever it is. I want to make sure I have internet service. So the other option that someone told me, or the audience told me on Instagram for the BetterWallet community, is that you can go and just tell whoever you're with to switch over to an international plan, which as you guys know, like, I don't pay all too much for my phone service. So I use Mint Mobile. They used to charge $30 for cell phone service. I'm now paying $15, which is like kind of crazy per month. So because I use that, and it's a low cost provider, they normally aren't that great when it comes to international. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. When I went down to Mexico, it didn't work at all. So like I was like scrambling, and I could only use Wi-Fi. So because of that, and because I'm going to Bali, and because I'm going to be there for some time, I wanted to make sure I had a service that actually worked. So that option didn't really work for me. So I'm going to try Googlefy, and maybe I'll do a podcast episode on the pros and cons of using Googlefy when you're traveling abroad. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are trying to travel throughout the summer and throughout the winter, if that's like one of your goals. So I might go ahead and do a review on that later. Again, this is not sponsored at all yet. Like, hopefully Google sponsors me. That'd be great. But, I want to make sure I'm leaving a review for you guys so you know exactly what cell phone plan you should be using when traveling abroad. But with that, I'm really excited, but very nervous of traveling abroad. The nervousness really comes down to just the flight and the turbulence. But the cool thing is, the time that you guys are listening to this episode, by the time you're listening to it, which should be coming out on the 18th of July. So depending on when you're listening to this, I'm already in Bali. I'm already in Bali. I'm sure everything's great. I'm sure I'm having a fun time. So if you're listening to this and you want to, just show some love, feel free to just put it into the review. So leave a review, leave 5 stars, and just wish me some good luck in Bali. You could also just shoot me a DM if you're listening to this episode, and just be like, hey, I listened to your episode. I hope you're having a great time, because that will mean the world to me. So with that, I'm really excited about traveling. So logistically, I'm flying to Dallas tomorrow. I'm going to leave with the Dallas guys to go to Bali. Again, we're going to have a short layover in South Korea, but we're leaving for Bali/South Korea on the 12th. So I'm really excited. So with that, we're going to close, and I'll see you at the next episode of the BetterWallet Podcast. Deuces.
Thanks for tuning in to the BetterWallet Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you found any value, we'd appreciate a rating and review.